Hello and welcome back to the FeaturesTalk podcast,
Woo!
where we are making vehicle technology simple and relevant for everyday drivers. I am your host, Lisa Bailey, and joining me, as always, is our resident automotive product specialist, Luke Versput. Welcome back, Luke.
Hello, everyone.
It is
We're in season 3 of the podcast. Wow.
I know. Time is moving fast, but we have lots to talk about.
Mhm.
I'm very excited about the season. We kicked off. This is our third episode in season 3, and
Yeah.
we kicked it off with Jason B. Johnson and Katie Harris opening up some huge conversations about collaborative intelligence, in-cabin sensors, Euro in-cab standards. We talked about the ADAS repair gap. We talked about quite a bit. We laid a lot on you guys at the beginning of the year, but we have great plans for the rest of the season to really dive deeper into these topics. And so that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going one layer deeper into the conversation that Jason touched on, and we're going to be talking about micro interactions, right?
Micro interactions.
Yeah. So every time you're turning down the radio or you're easing up on the steering wheel or ignoring that lane centering nudge, your car is listening. And so I think this is very important when you think about ADAS and the conversation that we had with Jason on how advanced AI is becoming to be able to personalize this experience for you in the car. And in order to do that, there is measuring of your behavior. And so for some drivers, that sounds a little bit leery. It's like, well, how is the car going to know what I'm doing? And how is it measuring me? And how am I sharing this? And that's the whole point of this episode today, is to talk about something that is already happening. It's already been happening. It's a quiet conversation that you've been having with your car. We just never thought of it as a conversation. And so that's why we're unpacking that today, because the technology, essentially, you can just say the technology has gotten better at listening to you. And so now it's going to start responding. You know what I mean? It's that back and forth conversation.
Yep. Better at listening and better at learning.
Exactly. And so I would love to just start the episode off. This is going to be a basic intro for our listeners to understand what is a micro interaction, just like the simple basic terms, because what we're talking about right now is not anything that you're not used to. We are talking about your behavior, the small interactions that you have in the car that you're not thinking about, right? And so, Luke, when you hear about micro interactions, how would you explain that? What is a micro interaction?
Yeah, it's an interesting term, right? Because normally, and it's I think it's especially useful to consider it like a quiet conversation, because when you hear the word interaction, which we hear all the time, I think most people default to thinking interaction with another person,
right?
Whether it's in person or virtual like this, we think of interaction. We don't think of doing this like as an interaction. You think talking with a person, and how interesting to call it a quiet conversation with if it's just you in the car. Well, a micro interaction is, I would say, a term for the moment-to-moment instances that culminate in the act of driving the car.
Yep.
Right. And like I kind of mentioned off stream earlier, if you say, so if someone says like, "Oh, I drove to work today," they tell you they drove to work, and you just automatically fill in the blanks of what are all the individual steps that it took to do that. I unlocked my car. I opened my door. I got in, closed the door, turned it on. And these are all, I would say, micro interactions. It's a tiny little unconscious behavior. And it's, I would say, it's all the little micro interactions that sum up the greater act of driving. Or really any act in general, like, oh, I went shopping or I went for a jog. And So these micro interactions have been happening for decades, for the over century that the car has been around.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's the conversation around it and the significance of these, and I would say the utilization of these micro interactions
Mm-hmm.
has evolved into something different nowadays.
Mm-hmm. It has. It has. And when you add intelligence, artificial intelligence, and reasoning to that, because that's what we were talking about with Jason,
Mm-hmm.
how the AI now, they, getting, being able to reason, being able to predict, based on your micro interactions. And
Mm-hmm.
I it's almost like what you normally do in your car is a input.
Mm-hmm.
You are in it, and that's kind of the connection we have to make now, as drivers, is that we are living in a world where there's data collection everywhere, and it's happening in the car. And whether you know it or not, you are participating, because even in your micro interactions, that is literally a input signal to the
Yep.
car. You know what
I
I
would
mean?
I would refer to each micro interaction as a data point.
Yes, exactly.
It's a data
Exactly.
point.
Yeah,
And of course, what do you do to make a line, to make a curve, to show a trend? You collect a lot of points. And so those
exactly.
micro interactions are data points. And as you put them, signals.
Yes.
Signals is a good way to put it.
Exactly. So if, like I said earlier, with your hands on the steering wheel, just thinking about when I'm driving, if I'm in traffic, if I'm stressed, or if I'm trying to do multiple things at once, maybe I am gripping the wheel a little bit more. And then maybe when I'm at the red light and I'm relaxed, I'm gripping the wheel less, or maybe my hands are off the wheel.
I was going to say hands might just be,
Yeah. Yeah. And so the car at this point, if we're talking about artificial intelligence and the reasoning, it's picking up and observing all of these little micro interactions. And really it's your behavior. And when you look at ADAS systems, they're learning what normal looks like to you. And
yeah,
that's the point. If you're going to personalize an experience, it would have to be normal to me. And that's what we were talking about, in that episode with Jason, is when you think about purchasing a car, right, that has ADAS or advanced vehicle technologies that provide a personalized experience, that
yeah,
means that there has to be some type of measuring, some type of collection, data input and output going on, and reasoning to be able to provide that that personalized experience, which I just think is a very interesting layer to add to the driving experience.
yeah. And it's what you said. The real key to it is personalized to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've all heard the term, once the one size fits all, and how so many things aren't one size fits all.
Right.
Um, and so talk about personalizing to someone, that's, billions of different personalized experiences potentially. And so, and that's where micro inputs,
Yep.
I'm sorry, micro interactions, the inputs that are the micro interactions become data points.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And you can even look at, driver monitoring systems, which are now part of the mandate. The Euro NCAP is implementing these standards for these driver monitoring systems to reduce
Mm-hmm.
driving under the influence, whether you're fatigued, whether you're distracted on your
Yeah.
phone. And like I said, if you think about that, um, just with the current driving experience, it's like, I don't want that. Why? I mean, like, why are we monitoring? It's just
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to understand driver monitoring systems. You see the safety benefits for them. But the purpose of today is to, I guess, to really lay the foundation that we're already doing it. We're
Yeah.
already we are already collaborating. There's already monitoring happening in the car. It's just not as advanced as what we see right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the driver monitoring system, that's an example of where, um, a lot of people talk about, and we've talked about how the the behavior of different ADAS systems is received differently by different people
Right.
with different preferences. Some people really like for ADAS to be there and be ready to intervene if needed. Other people want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the driver monitoring system is, one of those that where people's, kind of preferences on it can kind of split the room sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the and all the different micro interactions that that system is looking for to decide, do we sound the alarm now or do we not? The learning of that can help the system to maybe increase or decrease its sensitivity in
Right.
certain times more than others.
Right.
And so we're like, oh, in this case, in this set of circumstances, this set of data points,
Right.
given everything around, we've had episodes where we talk about the vehicle's interaction with infrastructure around and
Right.
other traffic. Based on all these factors, maybe the adaptation and that the reading of all those micro interactions would dictate that the system is much more sensitive in this point, keeping
Mhm.
you on it.
Mhm.
There's unpredictability coming up. Or if it's just maybe you are stuck in absolute bumper to bumper traffic
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going, and maybe adaptive cruise control is doing its thing and lane centering is doing its thing. If there's maybe a few seconds where the driver does one of those, maybe the system won't see it as too big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So again, hypotheticals, but you can see those kind of general scenarios are where coupling the what micro interactions it's getting with,
Mm-hmm.
how can it adapt it to, again, as you said, a personalized experience.
Exactly. Now, Luke, how is what we're describing today actually different from what power steering was doing 30 years ago? Because I think that parallel is the key to making this feel less foreign.
Right. So like say power steering, decades ago, it's just, hydraulic power steering. It's just, it's hydraulic fluid being, pushed through a pump, and it, helps you steer.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually some modern sports cars that still opt to use hydraulic power steering because it gives a certain tactile feel for pure driving tactility.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the car learning, if it's honing in on power steering, well, now we use electric power steering instead of hydraulic. But back then it was just, I would say, power steering came about as a way to improve the experience
Mm-hmm.
for users, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was no way to make that system learn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically like the shotgun approach, like just do this whole big power steering thing, and we'll assume that makes it better for everyone regardless of their preferences of the car. It's just better for everyone because you're not putting your entire upper body strength into turning a car, at least when it's parked. But nowadays even a system like that, like steering being electrically assisted,
Mm-hmm.
that can be something that adapts.
Mm-hmm.
And actually for many years now, there have been adaptive steering systems based on what drive mode you're in, normal mode versus sport mode.
Yep.
And so that could be another thing that the car learns. When you talked about earlier how maybe sometimes in some driving conditions your behavior might be one thing, in some conditions your behavior might be another.
Mm-hmm.
If the car, let's say, if it detects that if you're in a big hurry, maybe your steering inputs are going to be quicker, maybe a little more erratic.
Yes.
Whereas if you're just maybe not in a big hurry, the vehicle might interpret that as as seeing like, oh, it's a slower steering input. And maybe while this steering input is happening, this was done with one hand, whereas this one was done with two.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a pretty different world now from a hydraulic power steering system.
Now, would you say that power steering felt the driver's input and then amplified it mechanically?
Um, I wouldn't say back then. I wouldn't say it felt the input. No, and that's actually a good distinction.
Yeah.
It was just a mechanical system where, I mean, with obviously some electrical system involved, but basically when the just machine, when it detected that a steering input was moving this way, make the power steering motor do that.
Right. Right.
When it detected that the input was going this way, make the power steering motor go that way. And that
Exactly.
was basically it. And then it's like, well, it doesn't matter, whether the driver was turning the wheel or not. Like
Right.
whatever made the wheel turn, that's just what the motor was there to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of a purely if this then that, if this then that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly.
but
It,
that's zooming in on that specific thing. It was not a matter of there was no the power steering system had no aspect to it where it was aware of a human input or how that could be changed or how that could change dynamically.
exactly. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and where I think our viewers are going to have just a light bulb moment. We've already kind of transitioned into this, but it really is how the small actions become data points. So
Yep.
I want to walk through some real, like everyday micro interactions and explain what we think the car is registering when they're making that. So, for example, let's just say you're turning down the volume, right?
Yeah.
So a sudden drop in your audio can signal increased cognitive load. So maybe the driver is concentrating. And
Mhm.
this is a funny statement, but I have said it. I need to turn down to see better. I don't
Well,
know why.
people have been making jokes about that for so many years. For I've been seeing jokes about that since I was a kid. But like, people joke about it, but it comes from a place of truth
Yes.
because that's just that I talk to some people who thinks it's actually silly to do that. And so, again, we all process different stimuli differently.
Right.
Um, but for a lot of people, and it is kind of just a universal human brain thing that if when we need to focus attention on an abnormal amount of tension on something,
Mm-hmm.
we inherently kind of have to bring it down somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you turn down the volume so you can see better.
It's so true, right? And now you can think about some of the ADAS that I believe when you're in reverse, the volume goes down.
Oh yeah.
It automatically does it. So that
That's
means that
a, that's a that's a configurable setting on a lot of cars. Yeah.
at some point that data has already been collected. At some point, us as drivers have communicated, you know what, you're right. Let me turn the volume down because I need to see a little bit better.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that is an example of a micro interaction, something that you may not, put two and two together to say, oh, I'm micro interacting with my car, but this is legit what's happening when you're in the car.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. Another micro interaction can be lane drifting.
Oh gosh. Boy, talk about talk about the exact thing that feeds into the system we mentioned before, which is driver monitoring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is honestly, I will say, as because I've had a lot of people ask me about this all the time, like how does the fatigue system work? Like how does the driver fatigue alert work? And that is one of the biggest things is just lane drifting.
Yep.
Not paying attention, maybe you're dozing off. Tiny little input of the wheel makes you start to go that way. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's exactly it right there.
Mm-hmm. And a brief self-correcting drift, right, is very different from a slow sustained drift. So
Mhm.
to the technology or to the AI, right, repeated micro drifts are one of the earliest and most reliable fatigue signals. And if
Exactly.
you're just
100%.
to your point of the driver monitoring system, I mean, and then when you start to look at the data of how many accidents are happening with fatigue involved, it makes sense.
Yeah.
The safety is weaved through what we're seeing, even through these micro interactions. Another micro interaction, I mentioned this earlier, was gripping the wheel. And there
Yeah.
are sensors in your wheels,
Mhm.
right? There are sensors in the
Yeah.
wheels that can measure that. So loosening your grip at highway speed, even for a few seconds, can trigger hand off detection.
Mhm.
Technology is already measuring that now. Lane keep assist, the one in my car, you could have your hands off the wheel for a few seconds. I don't know how many seconds. And then it will start to alert you, put your hand back on the wheel. If you don't put your hands on the wheel, it disengages.
Right. Yeah.
Those
And
are all micro interactions.
exactly. And that, yeah, those kinds of sensors in the wheel, that's not ubiquitous on cars now, at least at the time of this video.
Mhm.
Hey, if anyone's watching this video 50 years in the future, it'll probably be ubiquitous then. Anyway,
100%.
but that's not ubiquitous on all cars now. But what is the deactivating of the feature if it detects hands off. Now,
Mhm.
what is most common on cars now is capacitive wheels.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily the grip pressure, at least on current cars. The grip pressure thing, I'm sure, will become more common,
Right.
in the future. But what we have now and have had for several years is capacitive touch wheels, where regardless of grip, it can sense if your skin is touching.
Mm.
And just like our phone touchscreens, right?
Yeah.
Your phone, most phones, they don't really sense whether you're pressing hard or not. They just sense whether skin is making contact.
Okay.
So a lot of steering wheels will do that, and that's their tell of whether the driver's has their hands on the wheel or not.
Mhm.
And then yeah, if you go hands off and you refuse to heed the warning of put your hands back on, then it'll deactivate the feature.
Mhm.
And the reasons we've gone into those reasons and on other episodes. But yeah, all those tiny little data points, you'd never even think of them as being significant, but they've become significant enough over the years that companies have poured millions into
Yes.
engineering features surrounding them.
Exactly. That's exactly what you just took the words right out my mouth. Those little micro interactions now are literally are how products are developed
Mm-hmm.
around these micro interactions that we are already having. Um, One
Exactly.
of the ones that is pretty common is the lane centering nudging, along with steering assist. So how quickly you respond to lane keep assist can tell the system a lot. Honestly, if you
Oh yeah.
respond slowly, maybe you're tired, maybe you're distracted. Versus if you
Yeah.
respond right away, maybe you're alerted, maybe there's something else going on. These are all micro interactions that are happening between you and the car. You can even go the other route to the infotainment and navigation patterns.
Right.
You
Yeah.
talked about this plenty of times with, oh, I see you're going on this route. Well, would you like to stop at McDonald's like you normally do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, frequent
Exactly.
frequent destinations, route overriding, so and then volume cycling, so indicating whether it's a distraction or stress. These are all micro interactions that we're having, and as we are having the micro interactions, technologies are then being created, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And we've gone into detail that the other people that these little micro interactions are um are extremely important to. We
Mm,
might not think we might not think it's a big deal that we just turn our volume down slightly when we need to back up, or just like look for a house address
mm-hmm.
or something like that. We might not think of it, and we make memes about it and joke about it for years. But who has a microscope on that? Insurance companies. We've t-
Oh yes.
you know how we've talked about before how the presence of ADAS features actually make a difference on how vehicles are insured. Can they be insured? What kinds of policies can they have?
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't, we're not doing a whole insurance topic right now, but we've talked about that before. And that again, these tiny little micro interactions are, we might not think anything of them then, but automakers pour millions into developing and researching features
Yep.
and systems based around those, and then insurance companies literally see those as important enough that they will set rates on certain vehicles and policies based on whether those vehicles have features around that. So it's
Exactly.
they say like little bits add up over time. Yeah,
Yes.
that
They
is that this is adding up over time.
it's so adding up over time. There's one other micro interaction I want to talk about because it's
Mhm.
one that I don't think is very common. I didn't think about it, and it
Mm.
was your blinking rate, your eye blink.
Right.
So
That's
how
right.
many times you're blinking, and so that can even be
Or
tied
how
to
much Or how much you're looking away. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so it's so interesting the things that we don't think about. It just it's tying the driver to really understand you're already participating.
Oh yeah,
Welcome to
absolutely.
the party. Like, we're already participating. And it's in my mind, it's a good thing because
Mm-hmm.
we need these technologies to operate the way they need to operate in the safest way possible. And so Katie talked about that briefly when we were talking about repairing these technologies and
Yeah.
how they have to be properly repaired. And so I want to shift a little bit into a word that I know makes people feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
And that word is monitoring, right?
Oh yeah.
So I really want to have a conversation about that. Consumer reports, and you can go and look at these reports, have consistently shown that drivers feel uneasy about the idea of being watched while they are in the car. Rightfully so.
Oh yeah.
Rightfully so. And so I want to address that. And I also want to reframe it because I feel the resistance here is both psychological, but it's also technological. It's both. And so number one, we've been in having this quiet conversation for decades, like we mentioned before. Adaptive cruise control reads your proximity to the car ahead of you, and then it responds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And ABS, it reads your panic stop and it intervenes. Climate control reads the temperature and it adjusts. And
Yeah.
none of that felt like surveillance to us.
Yeah.
ADAS is the same relationship, but it's extended. It's extended. And now with the conversation we had with Jason, we're talking about artificial intelligence stepping in and having this reasoning happening. And so I do think it's important that we understand that, and I've said it multiple times throughout this episode, is the safety aspect to why the micro interactions matter.
Yeah.
The micro interactions that we have with our car and the data collected, when you look at that and see the product at the end, that it develops driver assistance systems that can reduce the risk of a collision on the road, it puts this whole idea of monitoring in a different bucket for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it does for me too, because when you hear the word monitoring when driving, especially when, for some people, they don't really like the act of driving a car.
Right.
A car might still just be a transportation appliance to them to just go from A to B. But for a lot of people, whether you're don't really care about cars themselves or are super into them, driving by yourself can be a bit of respite for a lot of people, right? Because it's like there might be a lot of stuff going on in life, stuff at home, stuff at work, stuff with anything else you might have going on. But when I need to do this commute at this very moment, it's honestly one of the spaces that people are confined to that can kind of help them think, okay, one thing at a time. And right now, all I can do is just drive from one place to another. And then it's a bit of respite. It can help you just kind of reset a little bit. Like it feels like a kind of safe place. And so then, the idea of monitoring, it's like it feels like intruding on that safe place, or it can feel that way. But I think the term monitoring has become a little bit misconstrued in this sense. I would say it's about the adaptation and improvement of the ADAS features for safety, and improvement of safety features and everything like this. That doesn't mean that it's really intruding on that space. I think a lot of people are worried about, like, oh, I don't want to drive my car and have some computer, like, recording what I'm listening to, or recording the conversation I'm having with myself, or something to that extent. And to be honest, I personally wouldn't want that either. If I was told that on one of my everyday normal drives, what you say and do will be video and audio recorded,
Right.
Not going to tell you what for or who's going to get it.
Right.
It's just going to be recorded. I would say, no, then I'll walk.
Mm-hmm.
I would. And so like I wouldn't want that either. But again, I think monitoring has become a little bit misconstrued. The car, and for the betterment of your safety and the safety of the public driving,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be some. I wouldn't call it monitoring. Again, I would call it just data observation.
Yep.
About collecting of the data points of which micro interactions influence
Right.
the safety of the road.
Right. You said something key, and it really ties into the goal is intervention. It's not it's so the goal, the misconstrued of monitoring, you're absolutely right, because when you hear that word, especially right now in the world that we live in with social media, and there's just so many areas in people's life where they feel like they're being intruded on. and they're not really asking, to participate with that. And so when you hear the word monitoring and thinking in my car, like you said, a safe haven, I don't want anybody watching me. And so it's really understanding that, like you said, it's not monitoring, but it's more of intervention. I remember I'm being reminded of when Carl was on our season 2 episode, and that was our product specialist episode. And he said, number one, the car is a safe vehicle. It is to respond in a safe manner. And so anything that happens in the car, it is for your safety. And so even these micro interactions and these data points, it is to make sure that the technologies that are being developed can provide the proper intervention at the right time to keep you safe. And so those micro interactions in the system, having those inputs and knowing what time to trigger and knowing when to nudge you and when to send a vibration, those are all important data points in order to make sure that we can see less people dying on the road. I mean, this is a real thing. Like there has to be some type of intervention to where we can actually affect that data that we see on the road. And driver assistance systems and the vehicle advanced technologies that are developed, that is part of that whole vision. They are part of it, just like we are, And so there's also the psychological shift that's happening right now from going from being passive to aware. And so the honest conversation is that technology has changed our driving habits, and sometimes for the better and then sometimes for the worse. Because when you think about these technologies, we can also become over reliant on them. So we know that they're going to nudge us. We know that, we're going to receive that intervention. And so I truly believe that awareness is the bridge. So knowing what's happening in the car, the technology that's being developed today, knowing that it's not new, these micro interactions that you're having with your car is improving safety for everybody, not just you, but for the passengers, for the people outside that are on the streets that are walking. Everybody's safety is being improved. And awareness to me is the bridge that kind of, breaks down that distrust that we might have with where we're headed with these vehicle technologies that we see today.
Yeah. And awareness is the biggest key. That's the awareness is, I would say, the bedrock on which the FeaturesTalk podcast is built. Yep. It's of course, it's the biggest driving thing behind your vision and behind the whole, thing about the whole existence of Features First, is that it's about raising awareness of how that technology is changing and how it influences people's buying decisions on buying a new car and just how they know about how their current car is behaving. And so many times I've had people ask me about, what are the safety ratings on this car? What are the safety ratings on that car? And a lot of the stuff that we were talking about here and the micro interactions that help build safer systems, these are being used to rate the safety of cars.
Yes.
And in fact, the Euro NCAP, which is the European New Car Assessment Program, was I right? Yeah, European New Car Assessment Program. They along with NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the U.S., they actually use or they actually rate cars on based on the effectiveness of their driver monitoring systems when it comes to their safety ratings. And
Exactly.
we've all seen, you know, a picture, or we've all seen the slow motion videos of them, you know, throwing a car into a wall at 30 miles an hour
Right.
with a crash test dummy, and they're researching in slow motion, how does the dummy, like, especially if it's a side profile, you know, how does the dummy behave, you know, with the airbag? How does the physical component of the car change? And how does it deform in a way? Does it keep the driver safe?
Mm-hmm.
And but then they're also using, apart from just the physical, you know, how does the metal itself, you know, behave when you hit it real hard, they're also using things like the driver monitoring. And so a car that has a more effective driver monitoring system is going to be rated higher in safety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's an enormous thing. And I would say, for if anyone feels uneasy about the term monitoring,
Mm-hmm.
I get it and I sympathize with that. Hey, we all do. It's important to know that what it's monitoring, it's not monitoring, you know, your like personal preferences as a human being.
Right.
It's collecting data on the maybe human imperfections that in behavior that could make driving less safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's an important, it's important to have that conversation about monitoring, and as you like to say, it's evidence-based safety engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this actually is it's really great that we're talking about this, because um yeah, it comes up a lot. The whole idea of monitoring is, it's a big buzzword for a lot of people, and most people not in a good way today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, 100%. That leads right into our listener lane segment. You know, we collect questions, and we've had some questions come in specifically about this micro interaction. We actually have quite a bit of questions come in after the
Mm.
episode with Jason, when he started to just really peel back that layer on where we are going with AI and personalization. And we had a question come in, and they said, if my car is picking up on all of these signals, does that
Mhm.
mean it's actually learning me over time? And if so, where does that information go? Does it reset when I sell the car? Which is a great question.
Yeah.
We've talked about that on lots of episodes. I'm gonna hand it over to Luke, because I know that
Mhm.
there's quite a few things we can say and respond to that, but I want you to answer that question.
Yeah, and so when it comes to the car picking up on those signals, is it learning you? I would say you, the person, not quite. It's not learning you in the way a friend would learn you.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I think that is a source of a lot of people's concern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not here to make friends with my car. I just expect it to be the machine that takes me where I need to go. Right.
Exactly.
Um, you know, I don't need to, I don't need to divulge my, you know, my insecurities and secrets to it. Right. It's like I do that with friend. We'll do that with like a trusted friend or family.
Yes.
And you know, I know it sounds silly to say it that way, but I think that is
But it's
the source
real.
of a lot. That's the source of a lot of people's concern,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be for me too.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say no. The car does not learn you the way a friend would learn you,
Mm-hmm.
or the way that you would open up to a friend. What it's learning is what about your mechanical behavior, and I say mechanical behavior. It's not reading what you're thinking. It's not reading what you're feeling, right? Or things like that. It's learning what about your mechanical behavior could put you at could either make you a safety risk for yourself or for others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's learning. And so in terms of just you like in terms of you just being like a robot, for example, or something, like, yes, it would learn that. But, you know, but you're not a robot. We don't think of ourselves that way. And so no, the car is not learning you as a person on a deeper level.
Right.
It's it's learning what about your mechanical behavior is maybe a safety risk. And that information gets collected and goes to and this is where we, like you said, we talked about it before. Automakers collect that data to know how they need to improve safety features over time.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance companies use it to you know, to write, you know, policies and things like that on how some cars are maybe more insurable than others.
Mm-hmm.
And and ultimately it's I would say that's where it goes. It's ultimately for bettering these features over time. And as far as it resetting when the car goes to be sold, um, that is something that I know can be done.
Mm-hmm.
There's no car that you can't do a complete factory software wipe of.
Yes.
And so that all that data could be completely wiped out. And so if you have a very new car, and of course any car's ability to do this is assuming that it is a very new car. Um, a car from several years back wouldn't be quite as adaptive as this. But if you have a very new car and you want to make sure that none of that makes it in, or none of that makes it further, then you could actually bring it to a dealer that
Mm-hmm.
is, of your, and then you could request to have a service done where it completely wipes the vehicle. Not just oh, it deletes my phone from the Bluetooth list. Like no, it would wipe the car's slate clean. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's that's something that's an option that's there if you want it.
Yeah. I also think, because you touched on this a bit, clarifying also that when the car is collecting data, it's a good thing to clarify. It's not like the car is building some behavioral profile on you,
Exactly.
where like every time you get in the car, it's picking up where you left off on your last activity. The system resets every time you drive. You turn the car off, you turn it on, it resets. Now, does it collect and aggregate that data? Yes. Do they take that data and create insights and which affects product planning and improving safety and your driver preferences and personalization? Yes. But it's not like creating some type of, behavioral profile that wherever every time you get in the car, it's like, oh, well, you last did this yesterday. And so no, it's
Mhm.
not there yet. I don't I
Yeah,
mean, we're not
nothing's
there.
nothing's impossible. Um, yeah, nothing's impossible on that front or any front. But that is. I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a good
Yeah.
clarification. I mean, it's something that I know. I don't know if I may not have been quite clear enough on it, but
Yeah.
that collection of data points around all those micro interactions, that doesn't mean that if you could just suddenly, it doesn't mean you could right that minute like beam yourself over to an office somewhere and someone could pull a folder and say and show you in print, here's exactly how you behave when you thought you were alone.
Yeah.
It's that's not the kind of data collecting that cars do.
Yeah. And
But
it's all,
when
yeah.
when we see cars come out with safety features like improved smart cruise control
Mm-hmm.
and and automatic volume adjustments for navigation and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
that's evidence that it's doing. And I don't think anyone has complained about a cruise control system getting smoother or better.
No, no, they're not. They're definitely not complaining. They're definitely not complaining. And I'm glad you told her too. You can wipe your data. Some people, when they're selling their cars, they don't know that they can have that done.
Mhm.
And then just read your connected services agreement. Read your
Yes.
agreements. These are the to dos, the 101 things that we've gone over and in seasons past. Is just do your research and make sure that you know exactly what you're purchasing, and that you become more aware of where we are going in the industry and the types of products that are being developed, and know what you're purchasing. And so we did a great job today, I think, really just peeling back the quiet conversation
Mhm.
that we've all been having, that we've been having for years, whether you knew it or not.
Right.
So today we gave it a name and we mapped it out for you. And so I hope we made it feel a little bit less intimidating with the episode, because that's our goal. Our goal is to make sure that you are informed, so that you can be a safer driver, right? Because that
Mhm.
being a safe driver is, yes, having those obeying the rules of the road, but it's also now linked with technology and your awareness of it, and your confidence with using it. And so when you understand what your car is doing and why, you stop being a passenger in a system you don't understand, and you become a more confident, capable driver. And if today's conversation helped you see your car differently, share it with someone who you think might need to hear it.
Mhm.
Share it with a teenager. I share these episodes with my son. He's a teenager. I have two
Mhm. Yep.
teenagers, and I try to get their little friend groups, to tune into the episodes as many as
Yep.
they can, to try to learn new things. So just make sure you're subscribing to Features Talk podcast on YouTube. And at Features First Auto, follow us on LinkedIn to stay connected in between episodes. And if you've got a burning question, like we have going up across the screen, make sure that you can submit it. We always share the link where you can submit questions. Your questions really do drive the content of the episodes that we create on the podcast. And so until next time, make sure you stay aware, stay informed, and drive safely.
Drive safely. See ya.
Bye-bye.